The sky over Monterey was still painted with a misty blue-gray when Amelia Monroe's phone rang, an unfamiliar number blinking across the screen. It was the kind of morning she cherished, quiet, slow, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and sun-dappled plans for a new project. Her design studio, Coastal Revival, had just landed a major renovation contract, and she was reviewing mood boards in her cozy kitchen nook, still wrapped in her oversized robe, when the call pierced the calm. "Mrs. Monroe?" The voice on the line was crisp, professional. "This is Lisa Graham from First Pacific Lending. I'm calling to confirm the dispersal of funds from your recent home equity line of credit." Amelia paused, eyebrows pulling together. "I'm sorry, what line of credit?" "The loan approved for $392,000, secured against your home at 2425 Willow Creek Lane. The funds were transferred 3 weeks ago. We just wanted to ensure everything processed smoothly." Amelia's breath stalled. "I never applied for a loan," she said, her voice catching in her throat. There was a short silence on the line. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Monroe, but our records indicate that both you and Mr. Eric Monroe signed the paperwork. I have the documents here with your signatures." The world narrowed. Her cozy kitchen suddenly felt unfamiliar, like a movie set she wandered onto by accident. "That's not possible," she whispered. "I never signed anything." "If you believe this is fraudulent," Lisa said, her tone softening, "we advise you to visit the branch immediately." After hanging up, Amelia didn't move for a long moment. Her heart thudded in her chest as her eyes drifted toward the large bay window overlooking the front garden. The roses she'd planted last spring were blooming beautifully, but the sight brought no comfort. She walked to the living room in a daze, eyes scanning the family portraits that lined the hallway, wedding photos, their old dog Max who'd passed away last year, a shot of her and Eric holding hands on a beach in Big Sur. It had all felt so solid. So real. She sat down at their shared desktop computer, the same one she and Eric used to plan vacations, taxes, and design layouts for the house. To her surprise, the screen was already on, and his email was open. Eric was meticulous about closing tabs and logging out. This was strange. A subject line stood out like a neon sign. "Final condo closing this Friday, I'm so excited." The sender? Rachel S. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. Condo. Closing. Friday. She moved to click on the email, but it had already been marked as read and filed into a separate folder. She searched, digging into sent messages, archived threads, folders she didn't recognize. No sign of the message. Who was Rachel S.? What condo? Amelia's hands trembled as she tried to think logically, but her thoughts scattered like confetti in a windstorm. Before she could dig deeper, the front door opened. Eric was home, unexpectedly early. "Hey, babe," he called from the hallway, setting his briefcase down. "You're up early." Amelia turned slowly. Her eyes searched his face for something. A tell. A crack. "I got a call from the bank," she said, keeping her voice calm, even. "They said we took out a loan." Eric's expression didn't shift. Not visibly. But there was a half second, just a breath, where something flickered across his face. Surprise. Guilt. Panic. Then, it was gone. "That's weird," he said casually, walking into the kitchen and pouring himself a glass of water. "Probably a clerical error. I'll call them tomorrow and sort it out." "They said the documents had my signature," she pressed. "That the funds were dispersed weeks ago." He leaned against the counter, glass in hand. "You remember when we talked about refinancing last year? Maybe it's connected to that." "It wasn't a refinance," she replied sharply. "They said it was a new home equity line of credit." "You know I didn't sign anything." Eric shrugged. "Look, don't worry about it tonight. I'll take care of it. Could just be a mix-up." Amelia stared at him, suddenly seeing not her husband, but a stranger. His composure wasn't that of someone surprised. It was the smooth performance of someone used to covering his tracks. That night, sleep eluded her. Eric lay beside her, snoring softly, but she stared at the ceiling, heart racing. At midnight, his phone buzzed with a text. Eric shot up, grabbed it, and disappeared into the bathroom. The light under the door stayed on for 15 minutes. The next morning, Amelia drove straight to the bank. Lisa Graham met her personally and brought out the documents. "Here's the application. These are the signed pages." Eric's signature was flawless. Hers. Close, but not right. The loops on the M were too sharp. The slant of her last name was wrong. And her hand never trembled when she signed anything. "This is a forgery," she said, ice creeping into her voice. Lisa frowned. "Your husband submitted these in person. He said you couldn't come because of work. We did call to confirm, but the number matched the one on the application." "That's not my number," Amelia said flatly. Lisa hesitated, visibly shaken. "Do you want to see where the funds were wired?" "Yes. Immediately." Typing nervously, Lisa pulled up the records. "Transferred to Seaside Escrow Services. April 10th. Amelia blinked. That was the same date from the mysterious email. The condo closing. She left the bank in a trance. Her phone buzzed with a new message, from a number she didn't recognize. "The place is perfect. I can't believe this is really happening. You're amazing. R." A punch to the gut. Rachel. The sender from the email. Amelia stared at the text, the truth slamming into her like a tidal wave. The loan wasn't a mistake. Eric had taken it. He'd forged her signature. And he'd used the money to buy a condo, for another woman. She considered calling him. Screaming. Demanding answers. Instead, Amelia typed calmly. "New phone. Who is this?" Seconds later, the reply came. "Haha, very funny. It's Rachel. Still on for 3 at the condo?" Amelia didn't respond. She didn't need to. The truth was already unraveling in her mind like a blueprint burned at the edges. Eric Monroe wasn't just a liar. He was an architect of betrayal, and Amelia had just found the first cracks in his foundation. The sun was high and sharp over the Monterey hills as Amelia drove home from the bank, her hands stiff on the steering wheel. Every stoplight was a breath held. Every moment she didn't explode with fury or pull over and sob felt like a small miracle. She didn't cry, though. Not yet. The disbelief was still too thick in her throat to let grief in. Her home came into view, her house. The historic craftsman she and Eric had poured their time, sweat, and love into for nearly half a decade. Now it sat like a monument to a lie. The bricks felt colder. The white trim, which she'd painted herself, now looked sterile. The lavender bushes she had planted along the walkway seemed to mock her with their color. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and cedarwood, scents she used to find comforting. Now they clung to her like residue from a broken promise. Amelia walked past the sunroom they'd built together, where she used to sketch designs while Eric worked on his laptop nearby. That laptop. It might hold answers. But first, she needed to breathe. She sat on the edge of the bed, forcing her mind to retrace everything. When had things started to shift? Eric used to bring her coffee every morning. He used to surprise her with handwritten notes tucked into the pages of her sketchbook. They had routines, shared Spotify playlists, Sunday farmers market strolls, winter movie marathons with hot cider. Then, slowly, those little things stopped. Or maybe they were replaced with newer routines she hadn't been invited into. She remembered the first time she felt truly alone in their marriage. It had been after their third failed fertility treatment. Amelia had been bloated from hormones, emotionally drained, and physically bruised. Eric had said all the right things, held her hand, kissed her temple, promised they'd try again. But his eyes had already been elsewhere, staring at his phone, checking emails, responding to late-night emergencies for projects that never seemed to make it onto his company's website. She'd told herself he was stressed. That they both were. But maybe she just didn't want to see the truth. That afternoon, when Eric came home, Amelia was already seated at the kitchen island, a glass of white wine untouched in front of her. She had printed copies of the loan documents from the bank, spread neatly in front of her like a crime scene. He walked in humming, keys jingling, dress shirt wrinkled at the elbows. He froze when he saw the papers. "What's this?" he asked, playing the part of the puzzled husband. Amelia didn't answer. She just stared at him. The weight of her silence filled the room until it pressed on both their chests. "You forged my signature," she finally said. Eric's eyes darted to the papers. "This again?" he said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Amelia, come on. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's a misunderstanding. I've already spoken to the bank. I saw the documents. The contact number wasn't mine. The funds were wired to Seaside Escrow. You bought a condo, Eric." His smile faltered. "Okay. Yes, I bought a property. As an investment." Amelia's voice dropped. "With forged documents?" I didn't forge anything." She stood. "You signed my name without my knowledge. You lied to a bank. You took nearly $400,000 from the equity of our home and funneled it into something you kept secret from me. That's fraud, Eric. That's a felony. He rubbed his forehead. I was going to tell you. I just needed to. Needed to what? Her voice cracked. Seal the deal? Get the furniture delivered for your mistress? That landed. His jaw clenched. But he didn't deny it. Amelia nodded slowly. I thought so. Eric stepped forward, arms raised slightly. Listen. You don't understand. Rachel was. She was a mistake. I was under a lot of pressure. Work, finances, the fertility stuff, it was all too much. She stepped back, disgust tightening her chest. So you repaid my infertility with infidelity? You repaid my trust by gutting the equity of the house I built, room by room, for some 20-something with fake lashes and zero integrity? You weren't there anymore, Eric said, and his voice had that cold, wounded tone people used when they wanted to blame you for their betrayal. You were always working. Always exhausted. The house, your business, the treatments, you were disappearing. Amelia flinched but held her ground. I was trying to build a life for us. I didn't know I was the only one still interested in us. Silence followed. Heavy and ugly. She picked up the documents, gathering them into a neat stack. Don't worry, Eric. I'm not going to scream or throw things. I'm not even going to ask you to explain. I know exactly who you are now. I can fix this, he said, panicking. Let me fix this. You can't unsign my name, she replied. That night, Amelia didn't sleep. While Eric dozed off, perhaps thinking she'd calm down, she sat in her office, digging through records, backup drives, cloud folders. He had already changed the password on their shared financial spreadsheets. Several folders had been deleted. His cloud account was locked. He was erasing his tracks. At 2:13 a.m., another text arrived, from Rachel. Amelia read it silently on Eric's tablet, which had synced with his phone. Can't wait for our weekend getaway, we need a real bed this time, haha. So it wasn't just a condo. It wasn't just an affair. There were weekends. Hotels. Lies upon lies. She took screenshots of everything. Forwarded them to her own email. Copied documents to a secure drive. Each click was another brick in the wall she was building between them. By dawn, her plan had begun to form. Amelia would not confront Eric again, not yet. She needed legal ground beneath her feet first. She needed someone who could see through the maze of financial deception and help her claim what was hers. Because this wasn't just about a marriage anymore. This was about identity theft. Fraud. And maybe more. She glanced over at Eric, still asleep, still oblivious to the storm he'd unleashed. Let him rest, she thought grimly. The reckoning would come soon enough. And Amelia Monroe would be wide awake when it did. By the next morning, Amelia was done waiting. She was meticulous by nature, a designer who believed that beauty lay not just in aesthetics but in structure. She approached her life the same way. So, when betrayal shattered her foundation, she did what any skilled builder would, she started creating blueprints for demolition. At 8:01 a.m., she stepped into the office of Claire Ramsey, a divorce and fraud attorney with a reputation for handling high-stakes financial deception. Claire's office wasn't ostentatious. No mahogany bookshelves or oil paintings of eagles. Just clean lines, steel finishes, and a faint scent of bergamot in the air. Efficient. Modern. Ruthless. I need to protect myself, Amelia said as she slid a flash drive across the desk. And fast. Claire plugged it in. She browsed the folders without speaking, but her eyebrows twitched as she saw screenshots of forged documents, Rachel's texts, and the email records. Your husband forged your signature to acquire a loan on your shared home, used the funds to buy real estate in another woman's name, and is attempting to hide the paper trail? Amelia nodded. Yes. And I think he's creating false documentation to make it look like I was in on the investment. Claire leaned back. First, we file for legal separation to halt further financial damage. That gives us a legal edge before he can move more funds. Then, we compile all this and present it to the bank's fraud division and the authorities. You have leverage, Amelia. This is criminal. Amelia expected to feel triumphant. She didn't. She just felt tired. Claire continued, one more thing. Until this is handled, do not confront him. He might hide more evidence, drain accounts, or worse. Amelia nodded, her lips tight. She'd already decided that much. When she returned home, Eric was lounging in their sunroom with a cup of coffee and a smug expression. You seemed tense last night. You okay? Just tired, she replied, matching his nonchalance. Later that day, while he was out, she dug deeper. She accessed a city property database and searched under Rachel's full name, Rachel Simmons. Sure enough, there it was. A 2-bedroom luxury condo in Seaside Heights, purchased 12 days earlier for $387,000. The buyer? Rachel Simmons. The payment? Wired from Seaside Escrow. The same firm where her stolen home equity had been funneled. A gut punch. Amelia stared at the listing, photos of sleek granite countertops and ocean views, a stark contrast to the warm vintage charm of her own home. That's where her money had gone. Into a fantasy escape for a woman who didn't know, or didn't care, that she was living on stolen dreams. As if summoned by her thoughts, a new text buzzed on Eric's tablet. He'd forgotten to disable the sync. Rachel, just passed by the condo. Feels like a dream. Thank you for making this happen, E. Amelia took a screenshot and saved it. She knew she couldn't wait much longer to act. But she needed undeniable proof linking Eric directly to the condo purchase, not just circumstantial texts and shady bank documents. A confrontation too early would give him time to fabricate explanations, destroy evidence, or worse, flip the narrative against her. So she made a bold decision. At 2 p.m. the next afternoon, Amelia drove across town and parked across the street from the Seaside Heights building. She stayed in her car, sunglasses on, heart pounding. She didn't know what she expected, maybe to glimpse Rachel and confirm she was real. Maybe to catch Eric in the act of nesting into his second life. At precisely 2:17, a sleek black BMW pulled up. Eric stepped out, smoothing his blazer, checking his reflection in the building's mirrored entryway. She knew that move. It was the same one he did before client meetings. Except this wasn't work. It was seduction. 10 minutes later, a woman arrived, tall, striking, early 30s, with long waves of chestnut hair and the self-assurance of someone who believed the world was hers. Rachel. She didn't knock. She punched in a code at the door and walked in like she belonged. Amelia stared at the door long after it closed behind them. She'd wanted confirmation. Now she had it. Later that evening, Eric returned home with Thai takeout, her favorite, and a casual demeanor that made her stomach churn. Felt like you needed comfort food, he said with a wink, placing the containers on the kitchen counter. She played along. Nodded. Ate slowly while he chatted about work deadlines and clients. A normal evening on the surface, two people eating Korean rice under warm kitchen lights. But beneath it all was poison. When he went to shower, she opened their latest joint credit card statement, which had arrived earlier that day. Among the usual charges, groceries, utilities, gas, was a $4,300 transaction at a luxury jeweler downtown. Amelia blinked. She had been out of town that weekend at a design conference in Vancouver. Eric had said he was working overtime. Now she knew he was buying diamonds for someone else, with her credit. She wanted to scream. But she didn't. She documented the charge, took a photo of the receipt, and filed it with the others. Then came the text. Eric, in the other room, must have been texting Rachel. A message lit up the tablet. Can't wait for our weekend getaway, just you and me. She'll never figure it out, winking face emoji. But it wasn't Rachel who received that text. It was Amelia. Her email had been auto-filled into the contact field. Maybe he'd forgotten to delete her name from a previous thread. Maybe he was just careless now, so comfortable in his deception that he didn't even think he could be caught. Amelia read the message. Her hand trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. She turned off the tablet, walked calmly into the bedroom, and stared at herself in the mirror. She was done being cautious. The next morning, she went back to Claire and handed over every document, screenshots, recordings, statements, the misdirected text. Claire raised her eyebrows. He sent this. To you. Amelia nodded. His mistake. And my last straw. Claire picked up the phone. Then it's time to bring in the fraud unit. And the police. By 3 p.m., Amelia had filed a formal report with Monterey PD. Detective Elena Torres, seasoned in domestic and financial cases, listened intently, asked precise questions, and requested all evidence. He's likely trying to create the appearance of joint ownership, Claire added. To protect himself legally. But this documentation proves otherwise. We'll issue a protection order, Detective Torres said. And we'll begin monitoring his activity. Until then, don't return home alone. Do you have somewhere safe to go? Amelia nodded. My sister has a guest room. That night, as she packed essentials, Eric texted again. Surprise weekend. I booked the cabin, just us, like old times. Leaving Friday. We need this. Her blood ran cold. The cabin. A remote spot in the mountains where cell reception was spotty at best. They'd spent anniversaries there. Watched snowfall. Laughed over board games by the fire. But now she didn't know if she'd ever come back from a trip like that. Because Eric's secrets were deeper than infidelity. More dangerous than lies. And somewhere in the shadows of his perfect smile, Amelia feared he might be planning something far worse. The cabin invitation felt like a final act. A neat bow on top of a carefully orchestrated lie, or perhaps something darker. Amelia stood by the kitchen window, the breeze fluttering the linen curtain beside her. Eric's text echoed in her mind. Surprise weekend. I booked the cabin, just us, like old times. Once, those words would have thrilled her. Now, they made her skin crawl. Her memories of the cabin were mostly warm. Cracking logs in the fireplace, the scent of pine in the air, chilly mornings wrapped in wool blankets. It was their haven. A place where love had once lived. But now, she saw it differently. Remote. Isolated. A perfect stage for something that could look like an accident. Amelia's mind spun through the pieces, the forged loan, the jewelry, the texts, and finally, the most terrifying evidence, Eric's recent internet searches, which she had found the night before. Hiking accidents California, how long before missing person report, poisons undetectable in autopsy. She took pictures of the search history with her phone, her hands trembling. She had wanted to believe there was a limit to his betrayal, but this crossed into something irreversibly sinister. She called Detective Torres immediately. After she detailed everything, there was a long pause. Then, the detective's voice came steady and low. Amelia, this is serious. You've done the right thing documenting everything. I'm filing for an emergency protective order now. Do not go anywhere with him, especially not the cabin. I won't, she whispered. But I need time to collect more evidence. He's hiding everything behind passwords and fake paperwork. Then we'll help you. But stay somewhere safe. That night, Amelia slept at her sister Dana's house, if you could call it sleep. She lay awake in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing. Her stomach twisted at the thought that the man beside whom she'd spent 8 years could so casually research her death. And what if he had already tried to harm her in subtle ways? That strange illness after their camping trip last spring. The herbal tea he insisted she drink when she had the flu. The paranoia set in like frost. By morning, she had a plan. A risky one. She texted Eric, "Can we have lunch tomorrow? Just us. I want to talk." She picked a restaurant 40 minutes from home, buying time. Of course, he replied immediately. Noon. I'll book a table. While Eric believed she was interested in reconciliation, Amelia and Dana headed back to the house the moment he left for the fake lunch date. With a spare key and a plan, they entered the house and went straight for Amelia's office. She retrieved all her legal documents, financial statements, and heirloom jewelry from her grandmother's box hidden in the closet. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed something flashing on Eric's desktop across the hallway. A notification. A message preview. She stepped closer. Rachel, so excited for our trip. She'll never figure it out, right? The air froze around her. Trip? The cabin wasn't meant for her. It was meant for Rachel. It all fell into place. The misfired text. The sudden romantic gestures. The weekend plans. He wasn't luring Amelia to the cabin, he was taking Rachel, and likely using it as a final cover to clean up loose ends. Maybe even stage something that would eliminate both of them as problems. Amelia. Dana called from the front window, panic rising in her voice. His car just turned onto the street. No. No, he was supposed to be at lunch, Amelia muttered, heart pounding. He's back early. He knew. He's coming back now. Grab the bags. Back door. We're leaving, she hissed. But as they reached the kitchen, the doorknob turned. It wasn't Eric. A woman stood in the doorway, holding grocery bags and blinking in confusion. Rachel. Who the hell are you? She demanded. What are you doing in our house? Amelia stepped forward, spine straightening with rage. Our house? This is my house. Paid for by my name. With a loan I didn't authorize. Rachel's eyes narrowed, but she didn't have time to respond. The front door slammed open. Eric walked in, smiling with a bottle of champagne in hand. "Babe. I got." He stopped cold. In front of him stood his wife, his mistress, and his sister-in-law. All in one room. And that's when Amelia's phone buzzed with a new message. From Eric. She'll never figure it out. Wrong number. Wrong woman. She held up the screen and met his eyes. "Guess what, Eric? I figured it out." Eric's face turned a sickly shade of gray as he read the text on Amelia's phone, the one he'd meant for Rachel but had sent, by some cruel twist of fate, to his wife. The room stood frozen for a moment. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator and Rachel's shallow, confused breathing as her eyes flicked between Amelia and Eric. "I can explain," Eric finally said, his voice a whisper. "Amelia, please. Let's talk. Just you and me." Amelia stood her ground. "No more lies. You forged my name. You stole nearly $400,000 from the home I built. You funded your affair with it. And now I have texts, screenshots, financial records, even proof you were planning something far worse." Rachel turned sharply toward him. "What is she talking about?" "Don't listen to her," Eric stammered. "She's twisting things." Amelia lifted her phone and began scrolling. Hiking accidents. Poison undetectable in autopsies. Life insurance payouts for spouses. She turned the screen so Rachel could see it. These were in his search history. "You think he was just going to live happily ever after with you?" "Sweetheart, we have a joint policy." Rachel's mouth parted, stunned. Just then, a voice echoed from outside. "Mrs. Monroe?" came the calm, authoritative tone of Detective Elena Torres. Amelia exhaled with relief. "Right on time. We're in here," she called. A second later, the detective entered, hand resting on her holstered weapon. She took one look at the trio and the tension between them and made a snap judgment. "Mr. Monroe," she said coolly, "you're violating the terms of your emergency protection order. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, immediately." Eric started to protest. "But I live here." "Not anymore," Amelia interrupted, her voice strong and clear. "The locks have been changed. The alarm code reset. The home is under my name, and the separation papers were filed this morning." She handed him a crisp manila envelope with divorce documents peeking out from the edge. "You'll be served officially tomorrow. But here's your preview." Rachel stepped backward, looking utterly betrayed. "You told me she knew. That it was your investment. That you were leaving her months ago." Eric looked between the women, realizing the walls were closing in. "You've made your point," he said through grated teeth. "Now can we please talk like adults?" Amelia met his eyes, her expression steel. "You don't talk your way out of felony bank fraud." Outside, more officers arrived. A cruiser idled at the curb, drawing neighbors to their porches with curious stares. Detective Torres gave Eric one last chance. "Walk away now, or we arrest you." Eric looked at Amelia one more time, as if pleading for a lifeline. But she was no longer the woman who had once softened at his smile. He left. By nightfall, Eric's belongings were boxed up and stacked on the front lawn. Dana helped Amelia sort through his designer clothes, tech gear, and architecture books. Neighbors watched silently, a few pretending to water their plants as they peeked from behind hedges. Rumors would spread, of course they would. But Amelia didn't care. The truth was now hers to carry, not to conceal. Rachel had disappeared without another word. After Detective Torres spoke to her privately, she left pale-faced and trembling, likely realizing just how close she'd been to being part of a deadly plan, or perhaps even its next victim. Later that evening, as Amelia stood at the foot of the lawn staring at the boxed-up remnants of her ex-husband's life, Eric returned. He stood next to his black BMW, arms crossed. "You ruined me," he said bitterly. Amelia didn't blink. "You did that yourself." "That money was for us," he growled. "The condo was an investment." "And the forged documents? The affair? The jewelry?" She fired back. "Was that for us too?" Eric's expression twisted, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "Don't bother. I've already spoken to the bank. The fraud department is opening a formal case. You'll be investigated. You might even be charged. But more importantly, you're out of my life. Out of my house. Out of everything I built. None of this is fair," he muttered, as if fairness had ever been part of his vocabulary. Amelia gave a thin smile. "Life rarely is. But truth? That's something you can't fake forever." 6 months passed. The divorce finalized. Eric's fraud was undeniable. When confronted by the bank's legal team, He folded, accepting a plea deal to avoid jail time. His reputation was shredded. His architectural firm asked for his resignation. He sold the condo to pay restitution. The leftover debt, over $60,000, was his alone to carry. Amelia, meanwhile, kept the house. She repainted the walls, removed every piece of furniture he'd ever touched, turned the guest room into a bright new studio space. Her design firm, Coastal Revival, boomed, clients drawn by the quiet resilience in her voice, the way she spoke of rebuilding. Word spread. She didn't shy away from the story. She didn't broadcast it either. But when people asked why she was so meticulous with structural integrity, she'd say, because when the foundation cracks, you either collapse, or you start over stronger. One night, as Amelia curled up with a book beside her fireplace, one sheet lined with blue mosaic tile herself, she caught her reflection in the window. Not broken. Not afraid. But whole. The house felt different now. Lighter. She had survived deceit, dismantled delusion, and stared into the eyes of danger. And emerged with grace. Her new life was one built on truth. On strength. On decisions made with eyes wide open. Whatever she designed next, whether a home, a relationship, or a quiet evening to herself, it would rest on solid ground. Blueprints drawn by her hand alone.